That's what I'm saying. It's not very clear. So if you can use the call numbers if that helps. So that way your voice will at least come clearly. You might want to try that, and then we can use your data connection for sharing the screen. Okay, I have 8 a.m. We'll give people a few more minutes to join. Yeah, I can hear you, Ashish. It's just that it's breaking, so it's gonna be difficult if you're gonna be presenting. So try to call the numbers.
Yeah. All right. So is this better now?
It's the same. So you should try to. Okay. Yeah, don't drop. Stay where you are, and just disconnect your audio, and then call on a phone line. So that way your voice will go to the phone line, which should be okay. Yeah.
So we are using a phone line. We are using the US toll-free number.
Oh, you are using. Oh. Okay, well, I guess that's going to be the best we can do. All right. I know you're calling from Bengaluru, so that's half a well away, so we'll do what we can. Thank you. All right, so a bunch of people are joining. I see about 12 right now. We'll give people a few more minutes, as I said, and then we'll get started. So, as I always say,
Dr. Max, what we will do is we'll again dial back in a moment. We'll use other numbers.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Just let me know when you're there, and then that way we can see. Okay, so all right. I'm guessing Wayne has started the recording.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. And we have Eric from Diego coming. So we'll still give people a few more minutes. And just a reminder, if you're at Pivotal, come join us in Scorpius downstairs, 4th floor. I have Danny and Eric with me, so we're feeling kind of lonely. Yui's here, but she's at her desk. Hey. All right. So we got about 15, couple more minutes, and then we'll get started. DK just pinged me. He's gonna be calling. He's probably called in already. All right. So we got all the key people. I don't know if Chip is joining. We'll see. Got an update.
Dr. Max, we are back in. Can you hear us now?
Oh, it's much better, Ashish. It's much better.
Much better.
Yep. And then you still need to dial with your data so you can share your screen at some point. All right. Okay. And let me check one thing.
Right. So we are already dialed in using Zoom meeting as well. So we will share our screen. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Let me check to see if Scott is here from Pivotal. This is going to be the other presenter.
Okay.
Scott Lomdieu. I love his name. His French name for man and God. All right, Scott is not here yet. That's okay. He's the second presentation. So, Scott is here. Monsieur Lomdieu, how are you? Can hear you, Scott. Can you say something just to check? Got a mic check?
Can you hear me? Yes,
excellent. Thank you, Scott. Okay, cool. So I think we got everybody. We have about 23 participants. I said 8:05. It's 8:04 on my clock, but with 10 seconds to go, and then we'll get started. Is Chip here on the call? Or anybody from CFF, like Chris?
I don't see them.
Yeah, I don't see anybody here. Okay. All right, so we'll get started. I think we have two great presentations, so let's try to give them as much time as possible. So we'll go through the normal things, which is CFF update, and then kind of like the big PMC projects updates. I think people usually take notes, so if you can take notes, that would be helpful. So for CFF, let me ask again, anybody from the foundation here? No? Okay, so I think Yuri and I was on a call recently with I think some folks, and we have some data. So first thing, I think as I recall, this was on Tuesday, they said they had about 650 or so registrations. And that's pretty good because it's only about 3 more weeks. Well, we're 3 more weeks for the summit. And usually a lot of these registrations happen at the end. But still, if you haven't registered, you should register. There is a comp code for people that contribute to Cloud Foundry, and they're trying to reach 1,000. So if you can help by pushing some advertisement to your channels, that would be very helpful. Again, if you go to the website, you can see the agenda. It's jam-packed, tons of things happening, including, again, there will be a hackathon. If you were not in Santa Clara, let me tell you, it was really cool, not just because I was helping with it, but also because of what came out of it. If you want, we can discuss that via Slack, but there were really, really cool projects coming out of it, including one between Pivotal and I guess one member of IBM, Jules, where they added serverless to CF in a really cool way. They actually won, and there were really cool stuff, like, for instance, adding a repo for BOSH releases. Excellent projects, and it was one day. They're doing it again. Try to participate. Oh, and by the way, the prize, everybody that won got a drone. I think it was a DJI Maverick. I want one. But if you want one, you can participate. I can't participate, but definitely there'll be something significant that you can take home. All right. I don't know, Yuri, do you want to add anything to kind of like updates for CFF if you have? I don't know if you know anything else.
No, I think that was a good capture of the things that were talked about in the last call.
Okay, cool. So yes, so register, come join us in Basel. Tons of people here. I know at Pivotal will be there, certainly from IBM as well. And I'm guessing every other company. So come join us. If anything, for Swiss chocolates. They're pretty good. All right. So with that, let me see if there are any questions about Summit or anything. No? Okay, cool. So we'll do kind of project highlights. We usually start with Yuri for runtime, if she can mention anything that's sort of interesting that people should pay attention to. You're on mute. Okay.
So in the Runtime PMC, there was a good amount of project lifecycle activity recently. The container networking team, the work went from incubation to active in the Runtime PMC. We also have created a new project, the Services API team, based in London, that will be working with the CAPI team, but with a focus on the Open Service Broker API and helping with services. One of the first things they're taking on is service instance sharing, which I'm quite excited for them to take on. It's been challenging and kind of scary whenever we think about it. Additionally, we also have another team incubating in the Runtime PMC, the CF Permissions team, and they're looking at how to first tackle identity provider group mappings for cloud controller roles, and then at some point after that, kind of custom roles, fine-grained authorization for Cloud Controller, and potentially other components in the Cloud Foundry ecosystem to make use of. So those are kind of the broad strokes for the Runtime PMC.
Excellent. Thank you, Yui. You want to add anything, Eric, for Diego?
Yeah, a couple things to note for Diego. We're continuing with our decoupling from dependence on Consul. In fact, we have an environment in CI that's totally Consul independent at this point. It's running BOSH DNS and not doing any active Consul service registrations or locks anymore. So that's pretty exciting. And then one other thing, we've been working with another team that's developing a new project called the BOSH Process Manager that's designed to containerize BOSH jobs. And so we just finished some opt-in integration with their release that allows you to run all the Diego jobs in Runtime containers. So just moving incrementally towards better security posture for BOSH releases. I know integration of that as an opt-in feature is also continuing across some of the other runtime releases.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. Very cool. Any questions for Eric or Yui? No, people want to get to the talks. All right, fair enough. I guess if you have questions, after the fact, put it either on the agenda or on the Slack. I'm monitoring that. Okay, Dimitri, this is your turn. You're on mute.
Hey.
Hey.
Not many new things have been happening in terms of any new tracks, but we've been continuing to finish up all of the DNS related things. As Eric just mentioned, we've been trying to push other teams to use DNS in their environments as well, and trying to push PWS to continue adopt some of those changes. We've been recently implementing caching in our DNS server, and also trying to connect it up with all kinds of more custom healthiness information and whatnot to make it more viable to be used with software like MySQL. So if anyone is interested in more details about DNS, do drop by in Slack, and we can definitely chat more about. I think aside from that, we've been doing all kinds of different tiny ELI v2 cleanups over last month or so. So some of the newer features should be quite interesting. We recently added a command called vendor package that allows you to vendor the software from a different release without necessarily having to copy paste all its dependencies and trying to figure out how to manage that. So this stuff is documented on BOSH.io, but I haven't had a chance to email out about this new command to a larger community. So that's going to be an email upcoming soon. What else do we know? I know that's quite interesting. I think actually Eric did mention yet another thing that's interesting. BPM BOSH Process Manager. So one of the goals for this project was to make it easier to manage the life cycle of the job, start, stop, right? And we've historically had people try to write some kind of a common utilities to manage the PID files and whatnot. So BPM, aside from as an implementation detail, trying to throw in your process into a runC container, the goal of BPM also was as well to simplify and hopefully improve the UX of starting and stopping and managing the processes through BOSH. It still works with Monit, so the Monit isn't gone or anything like that. But instead of writing a CTL script, you just write a YAML file, and hopefully that makes it more easier to packaging. It's not quite done yet. It just yesterday they had the first final release, but we are definitely trying to incorporate it into a few other releases to see, how it goes. That's all I got for now.
Cool, man. That's pretty cool. So this I guess YAML language, is it something that the BOSH team is creating, or is it based on some other existing, I guess, BOSH?
I wouldn't call it a language. It's really just maybe 5 or so keys, right? That just specify how to start the process. It's based on what we did for Windows integration, or quite similar at least. So has the executable path arguments, environment variables, and there's like 2 or 3 tiny other things. But that's pretty much it. It just seemed what was commonly already being asked in other places. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. No, I did a hair quotes when I said language. But one more thing is, I guess it simplifies, because now you're not writing directly for Monet or depending on sort of the underlying, and then you have a translation layer that takes that YAML and does the right thing. Is it also less things to worry about? Like it's the resulting control scripts are tinier or smaller? Or?
Well, so there is no more control script after this one, right? I mean, unless you're packaging your software to to do maybe super fancy things, you might have to have a more complex starting bash script or whatever. But for 99% of cases, you do end up without any CTL script.
I see. So cool. So you simplify basically your release with just a couple YAML files versus control script.
Correct.
Wow. Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you, DK. I mean, this is major. I'm asking on purpose because I know Dimitri and I discussed this way back, and he showed me some example of it. I'm pretty amazed that this is going to be super helpful to not only BOSH adoption, but also to sort of simplify the current releases. So people, you should take a look at that. I don't know if people have questions, comments.
Yeah, so this is Ruben from Stark & Wayne. I have a question. So would it be something you use the new BOSH vendor functionality for? So you vendor the release of BPM in your existing release to use this, or how would you consume this?
The plan is to actually do something similar to what we do or planning to do with BOSH DNS. One of the some time ago, we've introduced the functionality to have multiple runtime configs. That functionality in SL isn't baked right now because there's no way to list runtime configs and things like that. So there's actually a work to address that. That's happening right now. But what's going to happen is we expect that we're going to end up with 2 runtime configs. One, let's say, would be for DNS, and that will be saying put DNS everywhere. And then the other one would be put BPM everywhere. And when you do put BPM everywhere, your other jobs should be able to just say, reference BPM binary at this location, var vcap jobs, BPM in BPM. So the expectation is that this is actually just it's almost like dynamic linking versus static linking, right? Because one of the notions is that BPM has a very stable interface, and even if it is changing, it will have a versioned approach to it. It is okay to actually depend on it without vendoring it in. And given that we don't want everyone to be vendoring in the same thing, this is the kind of approach that we're going after.
I should add that's what the Diego release opt-in does. It just assumes that there's a BPM executable at a conventional location. So that's the case if you manually deploy the BPM release and it happens to be at the expected location in var vcap jobs BPM. And that would be the case if it arrives via runtime. Cool.
All right. Thank you, Eric and Dimitri. Any other question, Ruben, or somebody else?
Yeah, one follow-up question. You there was mentioned that it also allows you to run stuff in Garden Run C. How is that installed then?
Not the Garden part, just Run C.
Oh, just Run C.
Right.
That's also a dependency, right? How is that then versioned?
That comes as a package from the BPM release.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Ruben. Okay, any other question? One last question. All right, sweet. So let me go to extensions very quickly so we can give Ashish and Scott some time to present. So we have two new proposals, one of which will be discussed today, Service Fabrik. The SAP team will be discussing this next. And then Stephen Levine, CF Local, which he presented last week. As I mentioned to people, you should definitely check it out. Really, really cool stuff. One more thing is that Abacus version 1.0 was released, and I want to acknowledge SAP's contribution for making this happen, in particular Hirsto and his team in Bulgaria. They are really doing a gang up job, staffing up a lot of people, and they also have a separate project called Abacus Broker. So if you're looking to charge people for your CF installation and you want to track, what people are using, and you want to do it at scale, you should take a look at Abacus. It's deployed right now in production in both the SAP cloud and of course the IBM cloud where it started. And with that, I want to mention that we are proposing to move it as a core project. So I'm going to start the process for that to happen, and then hopefully propose a vote coming. With CF Summit coming up, it probably we'll probably suggest a vote after CF Summit, but just be aware that this is coming.
Did you mean as an active project, Max?
Yes, as an active project. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'll change that. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Couple more things. The bot that I discussed, I think maybe last time, it's running. So if you tag your project with CF extensions, it should find it. If it doesn't find it, ping me, because I'm not looking at all all organizations that Cloud Foundry has repos on, but it should find the major ones. But if you don't, if you tag and you're not seeing anything, ping me. And then a few more things is that obviously, so I'll give a shameless plug, I guess, and then I'll explain why I'm doing cleanup. So at the summit, I have a talk, I guess, sponsored by IBM, so that's why I get to talk. But it's an interesting one because it sort of explains the philosophy behind extension, which is let 1,000 flowers bloom, right? So come to this talk if you can. But the reason I'm mentioning it is because while we try to attract as many projects as we can into extensions because we believe in innovation, so if you have your innovative ideas, bring them on, we also need to realize that some of those flowers will die. So that means cleanup. So be aware that as you submit to extensions and as projects are building up, we'll probably look at projects that are not having a lot of traction and start cleaning them up. And I think in Cloud Foundry, typically that means moving them to Attic or moving them out of whatever the PMC is. So I'm looking at that, including projects that I've submitted to essentially be cleaned up. And then one more thing is that there's been a few inquiries. So when those come in, I'll let you know. And so we got a nice pipeline building up. If you're interested in detail, just ping me. And then final thing is in the process update in the document, which is 2 pages, there is a update to the last part of the document, mainly in terms of how does a project move from incubating to become an active project. So I added a paragraph on this. If you care about those kind of things, take a look at it and make sure you give me any feedback. Otherwise, by the end of the month, I'll assume that nobody commented and then we'll move it to official as part of the process. It's pretty straightforward. It just says, people can essentially, after incubation, ask for their project to become active as long as it's in production. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay, so I have 8:25. Ashish is here and Scott is also here. Ashish has a longer presentation, so we'll start with him so we can give him as much time as possible. Ashish is part of the team in SAP that did Service Fabric. He's calling us all the way from India in Bengaluru. So Ashish, please share your screen. All right, thank you. We see your screen, so can you say something?
Yeah. All right. So thank you, Dr. Max, for giving us an opportunity today to present Service Fabric in this CAB meeting. Today, I have, so I'm Ashish. I'm the lead for Service Fabric, and I have got Jagdish, who is one of the lead architects for Service Fabric. All right. So let's get started. Okay. All right. So what is Service Fabric? So Service Fabric is basically a cloud foundry broker and developed for provisioning and management of enterprise-grade backing services. While we comply to Open Service Broker API specification, we also provide additional capabilities for day-to operations such as backup, restore, and monitoring. As of today, Service Fabric provides a couple of ways of provisioning services. One is using Docker Swarm as for developer-only services, and using BOSH, you can provision production-grade services. Yeah, moving to the next slide. All right, so our vision with respect to this project is right. So, our vision is basically to provide a framework with well-defined APIs which can be utilized by service owners to develop enterprise-grade backing services. And when it comes to day-to operation, we look forward to a pluggable framework which should provide the service owners to have the freedom to choose the monitoring and backup and restore solutions of their choice. And of course, finally, they should be able to deploy their solutions on a multi-cloud infrastructure. And then how do we achieve this? The idea is to basically conform to Open Service Broker API specification, and then obviously to work closely with Cloud Foundry community to solve so many challenges which we see forward. So what is SAP is gonna bring to the table? So we bring a solid 10 full-time engineers contributing to Service Fabric, and also we have been running Service Fabric in production since May this year, where some of our services like Postgres, Redis, MongoDB, and RabbitMQ utilize our Service Fabric framework. And when it comes to day-to operations, and then they are well supported by day-to operations for backup and restore. So we have the expertise of managing and developing some of these services. Yeah. Going to the available features, right? So currently we provide two flavors of provisioning backing services. One is using Docker Swarm for developer-only services, and then again BOSH-based services for production-grade and for your production-grade Cloud Foundry applications, right? And we also have open-sourced a generic backup and restore library, which basically abstracts functionalities like volume creation, deletion, attach, detach, which can be utilized by the service owners to implement their own backup and restore strategy. As of today, we support platforms like OpenStack, AWS, and Azure. While Service Fabric conforms to Open Service Broker API specification, we also provide extension APIs for backup and restore. So these APIs come with functionalities like start backup, abort backup, and similarly for your restore operations. While this is important, you also need to have capability to list on all the various backups which are there in the database, right? So for that, we provide APIs wherein you can retrieve all the backups which are there, and according to your choice, you can restore the backups. And then we also provide a generic service instance dashboard, which is created automatically for every service which is provisioned on the platform. On a production grade system, you need capabilities to basically automate the backup, automate your backups, right? So for that, we provide a scheduler API which enables you to take periodic backups. You can define, you can use cron-based expressions or human-readable expressions to subscribe to some of these. And also, if you want to abort some of these strategies, that is also very much supported by the framework. We also have written a logical volume driver for Docker, which is again has been opened publicly, and which provides capabilities to create multiple logical volumes on a single EBS volume. And then when it comes to monitoring, we generate lifecycle events like bind and unbind, and for broker specific operations like backup restore. So these are generated as Riemann, and using a Riemann interface you can integrate, you can use Riemann to listen to some of these events, and then according to your dashboard strategy you can plug in like InfluxDB and then Grafana for dashboards. Yeah. So that's about the available features as of today in Service Fabric. Moving to the next slide on our roadmap. Lately, we have seen a lot of load on our BOSH when it comes to updates. So we are coming up with an implementation where we can define an update window where the service owners can schedule their updates as per their own strategy. We also want to enable support of other backup and restore solutions. So currently, we provide a Python-based library, and we look forward to providing some other solutions as well. As of today, we provide events for Riemann, and we look forward to integrating some of other monitoring and logging solutions, for example, Prometheus and so on and so forth. When it comes to operations management, it becomes important that we provide a UI-based framework which can be used by operators to monitor some of the various service instances. I mean, it becomes extremely difficult for operators to know about the various CF commands. So that is something which is in our plan. And then we also look forward to some of the implementation, some of the new features which has been introduced by BOSH 2.0, something like cloud config. And then for some extra capabilities which we provide, like backup and restore, we look forward to providing a CF CLI plugin. All right, now I will hand it over to Jagdish, who will take us further to explain the architecture, and then will be followed by a brief.
Thanks, Ashish. So this is the high-level component diagram of Service Fabric Broker. So as you see in the center of the component diagram is the Service Fabric Broker. It is a Node.js implementation of the Open Service Broker API specification. So the northbound interfaces are consumed by the Cloud Cockpit, the UI, and and extension APIs are consumed by CLI plugins as well as the normal CF lifecycle. And Service Fabric Broker, it talks to Swarm Manager for instantiating Docker-based service instances, which is used purely for development purposes. And it goes via the BOSH for deploying BOSH-based service instances for production-grade instances. And the backup information is stored on S3 and 6 stores, and that is blob store is used. So this is the high-level diagram. So we can take a look at the deployment diagram as well for Service Fabric Broker. So I will start from the right-hand corner. So the heart of it is BOSH director. The BOSH director starts, the landscape deployment starts with first BOSH itself, deployed by the BOSH init, and the Cloud Foundry gets deployed, and then we have the Service Fabric deployment, which has two main parts of it. So the Service Fabric deployment has the Service Broker implementation, wherein you have the Service Fabric, the scheduler, as the Swarm Manager. Located on the same and
we ask people to go on mute if you're not speaking. because there's a lot of background noise. Go ahead.
I am hearing a lot of noise in the background.
Yeah, I asked people to go on mute, so hopefully.
I can still hear the background noise.
Who's the moderator for this? That I believe.
Yeah. Except for
yeah, well, no, we give it.
So somebody has some. So can you please go on mute? People?
We need to do it sometimes. It's either we give it.
Adam, can you
Either
go on
we give
mute,
it.
please?
I'm not able to mute him. Chuck and Wayne, can you mute Adam Evanor?
I just wanted to do a bit of research before saying everything works fine.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Go ahead, Ashish.
Okay, so I was explaining the service fabric deployment. It contains two main parts. One is the broker job, which has the broker, the swarm manager, and the scheduler co-located on the same VM. And then based on the number of Docker containers that we want to provision, you can add the number of Docker nodes. And we also have on Service Fabric, we also have an internal MongoDB, which is used to store the schedule information for the backups and other scheduled operations that get done via the Service Fabric broker. And each of the service instances themselves, which are deployed via Service Fabric broker, they can be via the Service Fabric broker. And the access to the Service Fabric broker for an admin can be via the jump box, and there is a Service Fabric admin UI. So this is a high-level deployment view of the Service Fabric. So let's take a quick demo as well. So as a service owner, so if somebody is a service owner and they want to bring in a service onboarded onto the Service Fabric, so what are the things that is required? So there are certain responsibilities that we expect from a service owner, and then there are certain responsibilities that the Service Fabric does. The services team, they need to define their service catalog, which gets displayed on the marketplace in CF. They need to also define a partial manifest with just the job definition. So it is a minimal manifest. It is a minimal service manifest that we call, which they need to define, which just has the jobs information. Now, what Service Fabric does is it takes that minimal service manifest and the service catalog, and at build time they get they become part of the Service Fabric configuration. And at runtime, Service Fabric generates the complete deployment manifest for the required service based on the service plan that is provided in the input. And based on the service plan, if it is a BOSH-based service plan, it can generate the manifest and provide that manifest for BOSH to do the provisioning. So let me just quickly go through the demo part of it. So I have three tiles here. So the bottom tile is I have logged into the jump box. And to quickly show you, to start with one of the services, this is an example service. So this is our open source GitHub repo, so where we are giving some examples of what a service needs to do. So as part of their onboarding, they need to define their catalog by defining their service plan. There are certain information that are specific to us, and we define the format of how it is supposed to be done. And once they define the service plan, they also need to provide a minimal manifest. So the minimal manifest, it's a template. It's a template which is used via the Lodash template to generate the actual manifest. So you get the actual manifest via the Lodash. We use Lodash. And they are supposed to provide the job definitions for the jobs and the properties that are required for the jobs. That's it. And all the other attributes like the networks definition, the resource pool definition,
the disk pool, and the releases of all these are injected by Service Fabric at runtime. So now, assuming that some of the services have provided the catalog and we have onboarded the service, once it's onboarded, we can view them in the marketplace. And just to take a sample example, I will provision a Docker service. So I'm going to provision a PostgreSQL server on a Docker base. So the Docker based service creation follows the synchronous way, wherein the services get created synchronously. So now I am on the Docker host. So I can see that there is a container that is created by the Service Fabric broker. Now I could also create a BOSH based service plan. So this is an asynchronous operation. So since it's a BOSH based service plan, and then so here I can see that this is a dashboard URL for the service, and I can log into the dashboard URL and I can see the events as it is happening. So right now it's creating the missing VMs, and I can see the same thing on the BOSH. Yeah, so now as you can see, the deployment is getting created here, and on the service instance dashboard, you can as well monitor this here as and when the progress of the deployment is happening. So the service instance dashboard gives a basic information about the service, and this is a generic dashboard that is provided for all the onboarded services by the Service Fabric automatically. In the meantime, by the time this service gets provisioned, I also have a sample application which I just want to show you. So this is, I just downloaded this app, and this is on the open source. So this app is now not bound to anything. So it's right now not bound to anything. And what I would do is, for the sake of this demo, I already had created a service instance called as demo test. So I'll just bind that to it. And this is the app URL. So as you can see on the top right hand corner, it is not bound to any services, and all the information from this is coming in from the in-memory database. So I will bind this app to the service, and I will restart the app. So by the time the app gets restarted, let me just show you the log. So this is, I am logging into the broker VM, and I would just want to show the deployment manifest that Service Fabric generates. Okay, so yeah, here is the deployment manifest. Yeah, so here is the deployment manifest for the deployment that we just created, and Service Fabric automatically takes care of providing all the other aspects of deployment manifest. Probably most of it is going to go into the cloud config when we integrate it into the BOSH 2.0, but all of this right now is provided by Service Fabric. The network definition and only the job definition part of it is something that the services team needs to define. Okay, so now looks like the app is up. So we can go back to the app and I'll just refresh the browser. And we can see that the app is bound to this service instance. And I would also like to show you the extension APIs that the Service Fabric has implemented.
Cool.
And this extension API, yeah.
Ashish, let me do a quick time check. We have about, because we need to get to Scott. So maybe if you can wrap up in about 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, show us what you can. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sure. We also have extension APIs, which is integrated via the CF CLI. So one could just go and they can do a CF start backup, and then they can say demo test. So this was a service instance that was created sometime back, and which was bound to this app. And one could monitor the status of this. And then this is an asynchronous process, and one can take a backup and yeah, so one can take it, the state is currently in processing, and then once it's done, we can actually do. So we also have the provision for listing of the backups, and similarly, you can, I mean, in the interest of time, users can also go back and restore to a particular snapshot where where the backups are there, and these are scheduled. So now let me go back to the demo, and probably Ashish can.
All right. So this is a summary of SAP's contributions to various Cloud Foundry projects, and so this is all we had. We can open up for questions now. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Ashish. Really cool. So we have about a minute for questions. If people, I don't see anything in the Slack, but if you have questions you want to ask live, maybe we can take a couple questions. Remember, everybody's on mute. You have to unmute yourself.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, Therese, go ahead. Sure.
So I saw in the footnote, I should introduce myself. I'm from Pivotal, and I'm the product manager for BOSH Backup and Restore. And thank you. This looks really interesting. I wondered, there's a footnote that says it can integrate with BBR. Could you talk about that?
Okay, so I had a backup slide for this. I'm hoping that there could be some questions on this. So the BOSH Backup and Restore and what Service Fabric Backup and Restore they does. So BOSH Backup and Restore, it is focused towards backup and restore of BOSH deployments, whereas Service Fabric Backup and Restore, it is from a managed service instance perspective. And also it's a scripting framework, and so what we are looking at is that what we have as what we have provided as a backup and restore library that could be plugged in as into one of the hooks of the BBR framework. So at this point in time, one of the things that we see as a limitation or a challenge with regards to BBR, which probably we can discuss, is probably in how the backup artifacts flow back from the deployment itself. So as part of the BBR, the backup artifacts flows back into the VF, whereas in case of Service Fabric, the backup artifacts directly gets uploaded from the deployment VM itself. So that is one point where the point of contention, and if that is resolved, probably BBR can be looked at for integration.
Okay, cool. I think you guys both are going to be at the CF Summit, so maybe it's a good time to discuss this. Therese will be there. She's in Europe, and I think Ashish, you're coming, right? So hopefully you guys can chat about that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if there's another quick question. Otherwise, we'll pass it to Scott. Any other burning question? Okay, well, thank you, Ashish. And I know it's 9 o'clock for you, so thank you for staying late. And we'll see you in, I guess, in Basel. And we look forward to people commenting on the proposal, right? The proposal is out, so please comment. So Ashish, you have to unshare your screen so that Scott can take over. Thank you very much, SAP.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay,
thanks
Scott.
a lot, Dr. Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. So Scott, you're on mute. All right, so take it over.
All right. Thanks for having me, Dr. Max. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am a PM at Pivotal, and I was asked to come today and talk to you about a product we're releasing into the market, and we'd also like to get it out into the foundation. So we wanted to get it out in front of everyone today. So I will start this presentation real quick. I'll get you a demo. We're talking about a scheduler for CF. We currently have this, we're productizing this as scheduler for PCF. Regular disclaimers about anything I say here may or may not actually happen. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we're doing and why we're doing it, and what our vision is for this now and in the future. So we had noticed a lot of our customers were asking us about the ability to execute workloads. I should try to keep that term workloads as things they'd like to execute, whatever those things are, in the context of Cloud Foundry. And we kept coming up with answers of you should have an external scheduler, you should have an external scheduler. And we found lots of folks were having difficulty integrating their legacy scheduling platforms with the constructs of Cloud Foundry. So we decided we wanted to put together this sort of ecosystem that would abstract jobs or tasks that could be executed, period, but specifically on a schedule, in a Cloud Foundry way, right? So that the primitives of Cloud Foundry would apply to scheduled workloads. And that was something we were really excited about, helping our customers move off of legacy scheduling platforms, and not because they're necessarily bad, but because they haven't quite kept up with the move to cloud native and some of the mechanisms that we all ask folks to participate in terms of the development lifecycle. So you might see a whole set of hardware and software deployed to support scheduled workloads that existed right next to all of the apps and services that were on Cloud Foundry. So we wanted to support our customers using those best practices in terms of cloud native microservice development lifecycles, in terms of CI, CD, and whatnot. So that was our short-term goal, pretty simply, is just to enable that. Longer term, we have some things we'd like to target, like right now the construct of this workload is either a CF task or a HTTP call, and we'd like to expand what those jobs can represent, like executing scheduled service interactions, binding or unbinding or backing up and restoring, etc., or things on the platform like adding and removing routes, blue-green deploys, etc., so that the platform itself has a scheduler as much as the app developer has a scheduler. So those are our longer-term things we'd like to look at. So in terms of what we've got right now, we have a sort of productized offering, scheduler for PCF. We have a beta out available on PivNet, and we're working on a GA here very shortly, which would support what is PCF 111 and 112, which are close to the latest. 112 is close to the latest of open source CF bits. And why that's interesting, and a note about this product specifically, is that we're trying to abstract away some of the changes that may happen in the underlying Cloud Foundry. So as you can see there, we mentioned 111 and 112, specifically PCF. Those are very different versions of the Cloud Controller API. And while they may not change as much in the future as the v3 endpoints start to stabilize, there's still a lot of work coming in the v3 endpoints and the way you can work with builds and stage droplets and use different versions of those and whatnot. And so to sort of cushion the user from those types of changes in the API, and specifically the way that the API works at a deeper level, we wanted to provide this abstraction at the job layer. So we see people using this for things like database migrations, sending emails or reports out, or doing your standard batch job processing. And again, I think a big thing that we're trying to express to folks is that just because you've got scheduled workloads doesn't mean you can't run them on CF. So that you have data that's in CF, you're using these data services, you've got your microservices went through testing. A lot of times folks are following a wholly different life cycle for doing scheduled workloads where they file IT tickets and attach jars to these tickets, and then they have a whole separate team with
Okay, I think Scott is, I hope he comes back, because this is actually very, very important project. I guess if you guys are Pivotal and you can ping him on a separate channel to tell him.
Sure, I'll try, but it looks like he's working from home today.
Yeah. I guess I'll try to use some of this time to mention that, you know, so I went over this with Scott. I mean, obviously this is already part of PCF, but this is really good. I mean, this is a great solution from
it is kind of an interesting thing. I wasn't quite aware of this project, but what, like, you know, since he's
back
for now, you know, imagine if you have a concourse, right? What else would you want, right? Why would you want this?
Oh, okay, interesting. So Dimitri has a nice question for you, but Scott, since you're back, try to finish, and then let's see if we can address DK's question.
Sure. One sec. Let me just finish this up. Okay, so I think I caught the tail end of that question, so I'll try to get to that. But it's a service broker. It's a service. It has a service broker. Exposes the service in the marketplace, and it also, as a developer, you have access through an API, so it has a RESTful API, and also a CLI, which executes all the same functions. It enables you to schedule the execution of Diego tasks, or Cloud Foundry tasks more specifically, that are Diego tasks. And it also, just recently, we're adding outbound HTTP calls. This will allow for integration to other workload managers. And it also helps to maintain status and history. This is another thing that's a little bit difficult in terms of other tools that you might see deployed onto Cloud Foundry, is that they a lot of times lack the ability to maintain the status of the executions and the history of the executions as they occur. So the scheduler takes care of that. And again, this is to move these scheduled workloads onto CF and get you into CI/CD best practices with your CF workloads. So you can define a job or a call. You can execute those jobs and calls as ad hoc executions, or you can schedule them. The schedule expression right now is a cron expression. We fully expect that folks will want to use more natural language or another type of expression. So we have left that extensible, where you can define the expression type as well as the expression. Right now, we only support cron expressions. Again, I mentioned we retain the history of all those executions. The nice thing about this is you get the full support of all of the CF functions of an app. So you have all the bindings of services, you have all of the sort of geometry definitions of your app. You get the build pack niceties and logging functionality and whatnot. So that's a big bonus for these, that you can use the same tooling that you do for your app and the same services you do for your app, same build packs you do for your app for your tasks. So it streamlines the development lifecycle and process. And again, we have the CLI and API. So it's on PivNet. We have as a beta right now. We have GA coming. It is separated in its repos into both a BOSH release and this tile that functions in a PCF Opsman. And then the CF CLI, again, is a separate component. And the great news is that we're preparing the proposal to start incubating this in the Cloud Foundry Foundation. So that will be coming shortly. So with that, I don't know how much time we have left, but I could run through a really brief demo.
I think Scott, since it's already in PCF, we trust you. People can take a look. Let's take some questions, because Dimitri's question is actually quite interesting, and people might have a question, and we only have about 2 minutes. So if you do remember Dimitri's question?
I think it was related to why not just use Concourse.
Exactly, pretty much. That's a good summary.
Yeah, so while Concourse has the ability, obviously, to schedule work, execute work on a timer, we perceived that the implementation of Concourse is sort of purpose-built for pipelines of executing these continuous integration and deployment, and it wasn't as close to those things I mentioned, like services and Cloud Foundry specific primitives, that we didn't want to have to force the I guess the Concourse purpose into the scheduler purpose, and the scheduler into the Concourse purpose being one major thing. The other is that the future work we're really looking to do, and one of the reasons why we're really excited to bring this to the foundation, is that we see that this could be very tightly coupled to the Cloud Foundry primitives, such that you can define these things in a manifest, so that you just push with the app manifest, and the tasks and schedules are defined all in one. The services are understood in a Cloud Foundry way. And so that was our main reason. Another reason we're bringing it to the foundation is to hear things like this and get that kind of really broad input into the direction of how this moves.
Okay, cool. DK, do you have a follow-up, or are you okay?
Yeah, my internet broke off a little bit, but I think I got the gist of it. I'm still very much unconvinced that re-implementing any of that would be operationally beneficial, right? Because Concourse provides you strong primitives for a lot of these things, right? And of course, when running in Concourse, you could be kicking off, CF run the task right at that time. So it's not necessarily that I'm advocating for running the actual, executing the actual bits in Concourse, but rather having Concourse as a kind of consolidated way of of managing the history, managing the resource change, managing the trigger, right? And
right.
Given that, I guess one of the strong kind of directions that we've always been pushing everyone at this point is to actually use Concourse. Supposedly a customer is already all in it, right? So,
but on the other hand, I mean, you could agree with Scott, right? Like, if I'm an app developer, I'm not trying to use a pipeline. Why can't I have a scheduler? So the notion of a scheduler is actually quite useful. So I think Scott mentioned that, and you guys are both pivotal. So Scott meet Dimitri, Dimitri meet Scott, right? You can chat about this. Let's see if anybody else has a question. I'm not trying to say Dimitri's question is not good. It's just we got to see if other people. Any other comments? Okay. We're running over. I want to thank everybody for joining and for great questions and presentations. Scott, I think this is really cool. So everybody, see you in Basel, Switzerland. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.